Hello everyone, my name is Oleksandr Leushchenko. I'm a Google developer expert in Dart and Flutter and a senior staff engineer at Tide. I switched to cross-platform mobile development 11 years ago. Most of the time I worked in one of the biggest outsourcing companies in Ukraine. So I worked with multiple technologies, dozens of clients and projects, and I had enough time to experiment. And I think that I found some universal practices that make sense for any technology and project of any size. Some techniques are widely adopted, like, for example, clean architecture. Some are adopted, but commonly misunderstood, like solid principles. With some, we agree on an intuitive level, like, for example, with keys and dry principles. And there is one category of practices that's somewhat controversial. It is adopted, but often misunderstood. And that's why it has lots of criticism in the community. I'm talking about tests. If you join Tide, by the way, we are hiring, most probably we will have a meeting between you and me where we will talk about tests and testing strategies. What I want us to have here today is a sort of shortened version of such a meeting. Let's talk about tests. I'd like to start with the why question. Why would I want to test my code? Is it about bugs? Like, will I have a bug-free application if I test my code? Would tests help me create a better architecture or allow me to refactor my code safely? Well, testing itself is not a process of finding abstract bugs. Computers are doing like big bobs, as we tell them, right? Your IDE, your app, your tools will not do more than you ask them to. If you cannot prove to me that your code works in sort of a manual way, you will not be able to make any automatization. Like, if I ask you to prove to me that your code works, you will probably start with examples. Like, if we were creating a calculator, you would show me that 2 + 2 = 4, which is true, so your calculator works, and thus your code works as expected. Like, examples are important when you prove that something works. Will tests help us with better architectures? Well, not directly, but tests will allow you to safely experiment and find the best architecture for the project in an iterative way. Let's get back to the example with calculator. No matter what state management pattern calculator uses under the hood, while 2 + 2 is 4, right? So again, good examples allow you to prove that the app works, and by experimenting, eventually build better architecture for the project. The same with any refactoring. Like, you can modify your code as you like, as soon as you can prove that your code works. And you prove that with examples. Sometimes these examples are called behaviors. And so we come to behavior-driven development, BDD. How can you come up with good behaviors? Well, in a perfect world, you ask your target audience. You may get unexpected results when you talk to your users. For example, if you are building, again, that calculator, things must be really straightforward, right? Like, calculator is not the hardest application or hardest tool to think. Well, I would not be that sure. You may win some hearts if you implement a reverse Polish notation calculator instead of a regular one. How can you know that? How can you learn about this notation's existence at all? Well, ask your users. I already had a talk on BDD at the Flutter Vikings conference. If you want to get more theory behind the topic, I highly recommend you to check that talk. There I cover BDD from more sort of theoretic point of view. And this talk on Flutter Vikings should appear on my YouTube channel as we talk. This time, I promised to give you a practical talk. That's why we have an IDE here. Let me close this and open Explorer. By the way, consider following me from now on in your IDE to get the most of this talk. It will not be that hard. Here I have the default counter application, and if you want to follow me, please create a counter app. And while some of you are doing that, let's review what we have here. The implementation is written in a single file. Well, clearly that will not work for a real project. So that's a really good candidate for the refactoring. And we have one test. Let's review what's going on here. We have some nice comments, but the code is like a joke, right? When you need to describe it, it's a bad joke. To me, everything is clear what's going on here. But if I want to start a dialogue with my user or with my project manager or product manager, with my designer, I need to simplify that. I cannot show a bunch of Dart code and expect that it will make sense to normal people. What if I make a Confluence page and describe what this test is doing there? Fear not, I will not torture you with Confluence now. So let me create a file, I don't know, somewhere under a test folder. I see in test widgets description that it's about increments. So I don't know, let's call it increment.feature. Something like that. Let me open it near our original test. And I don't know, translate this Dart code to some human code, human text, like title of this page. Well, counter increments smoke test. It can be, I don't know, I would call it increment feature. But you know what? Yes, it's title and it's sort of Confluence page, though let's not be that dogmatic. We're talking about features here, so I will rename that to feature. I will talk about different scenarios. Let's review what's going on here. Like I can see that I'm verifying something here and verifying something there. Well, you know what? If I remember books correctly that taught me how to write tests, it's not the best idea to have two assertions in a single file. So I will cover two sort of, I don't know, scenarios. Let's call that scenario. So scenario verifies that our counter starts at 0. I think it's a good name for this scenario, like counter starts at 0. What we have here, I don't know, we start with build our app and trigger a frame. It might be not that obvious for a normal person to understand what does it mean to trigger a frame. I will put it in other words, like given the app is running. All right, what's next? Expect that 0 is on the screen. All right, let's call it then I see 0 text, like that. And we have one additional verification here, expect, like, and I don't see 1 text. Because like here we have text here and there. All right, so that would be our first scenario. Let me add one more. that would be a scenario that our counter has incremented. Let's call it counter has incremented. Clearly, we need to, again, trigger a frame and build the app, because I'm sort of describing a different scenario, so we need to start from scratch. What's going on there? I tap this icon. You know what? I will just copy paste it from here. So when I tap the plus icon, what happens next? I see that 0 finds nothing, 1 finds one widget. All right, let me copy paste that. Then I don't see 0 text, and I see 1 text. Let me save that. We've got a document. Is it useful? I bet it is, as now I can start a conversation with real users or with managers or with designers, like with any non-technical teammates. And I can expect that they can understand me. All right. By seeing syntax highlight in my IDE, I think that you could already guess that this is not just a random text. We used Gherkin, a language that BDD specifications are written in. The language itself is extremely minimalistic. Like, we have features, scenarios, given, when, then, and some free-form texts. That's not the whole algebra. That's not the whole, not all keywords that are available in Gherkin, but pretty much the majority of them. So now we have widgets and Gherkin tests, like widget test and Gherkin test. Frankly, they are the same. They are just written differently. So I'd say my cat is our biggest fan. I'd say that we have code duplication here in our repository. We don't tolerate that. We may address this duplication by using BDD frameworks. It doesn't really matter what framework you will use. Gherkin, Ogorets, BDD widget test, others, like many of them. As long as the framework allows you to write tests in a way that's easy to read by non-technical persons, I mean, not in Dart, but for example, in plain English, and as long as that frameworks allows you to get rid of code duplication, I think we are good. I will use BDD widget test package. I don't know, maybe I am a bit old school and I tend to follow Unix principles. I prefer to combine small tools into big systems with some complex functionality rather than having a universal testing tool that does everything for me. So what I like in BDD widget test is that it's pretty dumb converter from Gherkin to plain old Dart tests, nothing more. Let's add a dependency. So I will go to pubspec.yaml file, go to dev dependencies because we are talking about tests, and we'll add BDD widget test here. BDD widget test uses a build runner for generating code. So I will add build runner here also and do pubget. Great, now I should have that package in my dependencies. I hope that you had enough time, if you're following me, to add those dependencies. Let's change the feature file just a tiny bit to align with BDD widget test syntax. We need somehow to tell the framework that 0 is a parameter and like then I see text is sort of function. You know what? Let me open widget test here and increment feature there. so that you can clearly see where we used functions and where we used parameters. So 0 is sort of parameter, and I can tell the framework that 0 is a parameter by just wrapping the parameter into brackets. But that's an integer, and we're talking about texts. So let's convert this integer to text. If you remember, in Dart, strings are created like that. All right, so that's a parameter 2. This one is a parameter, and this one is a parameter also. And here I will tell that plus sign is a parameter too, because potentially I might want to use or reuse this step in my other tests. So I will implement it like that. As I already told you, a BDD widget test uses build runner. So let's ask build runner to generate some code for us. For that, I will use Dart pub run build runner watch, and I will specify delete conflicting outputs flag. Let me run this guy. That will take just a moment. Oh, look, it's already done. Let's see what's generated for us and compare the generated code with the original one, with that one. So here is our new group of tests with some two test widgets. Let me close that. Counter starts at 0. That's just a part of our original test. We have here build app and trigger a frame. BDD widget test generated the app is running because we called that step the app is running. Let's look what's there. Oh, look, we have tester pump widget. And by the way, we can add const because why not? Here, like it's safe to modify those generated functions for us. So the first line is the same that we had before. Next line, I see text. Expect text, find text, expect, find text. So, hey, it looks familiar, right? This one, I don't see text. Again, finds nothing. So that's exactly what we had before. Let's review our next test. The app is running. I tap the icon. Oh, look, the framework was not smart enough to understand what we wanted to achieve with this step. It needs some help. Let us implement this logic. So it has one parameter, and we know that this parameter is an icon because we wrote it like that, like we passed a string with an icon there. Instead of throwing unimplemented error, I will copy paste those two lines here. All right, that looked good, but we ignored the parameter. Like right now, it just taps always on add button. As our previous speaker showed us, let's use some Dart 3 magic and get data from switch expression. Like here, I will switch on icon. If it's a plus icon, then I will return icon add. Otherwise, I will, I don't know, throw exception, unexpected icon. Oops, something like that. And let's pass this icon to the function. I think we are ready to run our tests. Let me run a Flutter test command now. We probably will have 3 tests now, right? Yes, 3 tests, and all of them passed. I think that we may get rid of the old widget tests file now, because that was our intention, to get rid of code duplication, right? Now the most exciting part, like, do you remember that I said that it might be a bad idea to store the whole implementation in a single file? We have tests now, so we can refactor everything. Like, before starting the refactoring, I want to show you two tools that I use on a daily basis. Let's talk about coverage gutters first. That's just a must-have plugin for VS Code if you are doing any test-first approach, because it highlights which lines of your code are covered with tests. If you are an Android Studio user, this functionality is already built in your IDE, and you may see covered lines by just running tests with coverage. Inspect the icon that runs tests in your IDE. To see which lines are covered, we need to generate a special alcove file. I will do, I can do that with Flutter test command. If I'm not wrong, I just need to pass a coverage parameter, but we can do better here. There is a special tool which is called spec, which is sort of a better test runner for your projects. So you can type the following command: dart pub global activate spec_CLI. This command will install spec on your machine. I already have one, and for the sake of safety of my presentation, I will not run this command now. I will run spec instead. So that would be spec with two parameters: coverage and watch. Coverage will tell spec to collect the information regarding test coverage. We will know which lines are covered with tests. And watch will tell spec not to finish its execution, but to monitor the file system and look for more changes to our tests. So let me run this command. Here, one test suite passed, two tests passed. Let's open our main file, and after you install Coverage Gutters plugin for your VS Code, you will have this watch button in the status bar. So I can click it, and it shows that 92% of my code is covered. Like, we have many green lines. We're not really interested in this code, to be honest. So we may say that the logic of the application has 100% of coverage. So we can start the refactoring. Like, first thing I probably want to do, I want to extract this file. Like, I will move my homepage to a separate file, and of course I need to move state class to it also, like that. And you know what? When I'm doing the refactoring, most of the time I'm keeping an eye on the terminal, because I just made some refactoring. I just extracted a class to a separate file. But look, I'm sure that my tests are still working. Isn't that great? I don't really like the approach with set states, and when we have that sort of primitive state management in the application. You know what? Let me add something more mature, some more mature state management. How about Flutter block? I like Flutter block. I hope you like Flutter blocks too. Great, we are doing refactoring. So I will create a new file. I will create a qubit folder, for example, and my home qubit file there. We'll start with state, my home state, which will be the reflection of our screen, sort of a view model for our screen. We have only one parameter there. which is counter. You know what? I prefer to have my constructors first. And let's implement qubit, my home qubit, which extends qubit with my home state here. It says that, oh my God, you need a constructor. Absolutely. I don't want to ask users of that qubit to provide initial state like that. So I will provide it myself, and it would be my home state with 0 value by default. I saved my file, and you can see that the whole test suite ran again. So far, nothing is covered here, which is expected because the refactoring is not finished. So let's copy paste that increment counter function to our qubit. Void increment counter, let's make it public. Counter plus plus, that's not exactly what I wanted it to do. I wanted to emit a new home state with counter value from our current state, but incremented with 1. Okay, look, my code is not working right now. That's why it says that we have 0 tests, like it just failed to compile. I'll remove counter from here. What should we do? We need to provide that qubit. I can provide it here above scaffold, or maybe in main file. I don't know what you prefer. I prefer to limit the scope of my qubits to pages. So let's maybe wrap scaffold with a widget, which would be block provider with create function. I'm not interested in context. I want my home qubit here. Great. Usually I extract, oh, by the way, we don't need state anymore, right? So let's make it a stateless widget. And we don't need all that boilerplate anymore. Great. Widget is here, title is here. We need to do something with that code. But let me extract a widget here. So that would be my home view. That works. Here I will provide a value from our counter. So let's wrap it in block. You know what? It will be not block builder, block selector. I need to provide my home qubit name, my home state name, the state name of the class for my state, and a value for my selector parameter. So that would be state.counter like that. And I will have a counter here. Okay, that should work. And on pressed, I will get my qubit, my home qubit, and run increment counter there. All right. Oh, look, the moment I saved my code, spec executed the whole test suite again. And let's go to this file. Like here in my page, I still have 100% of code coverage, and my qubit is covered also. Why is that? Like, shouldn't I write a special test file for that class? Because like, what about mapping? Like this qubit is not covered with tests. That's wrong. This is not wrong. Qubit is just an unimportant implementation detail. If tomorrow I will decide to migrate the project to Riverpod or to Block or to Redux, Mobix, GetX, I can easily do this, and I will still have 100% of code coverage because I tested the behavior of the application, not the implementation itself. I think that I have a little bit of time, right? So let's maybe write some new functionality, like we just started. For example, let's say that I want to see 0 text here instead of number. So according to test first technique, the first thing I should do, oh, by the way, we need to regenerate our tests, obviously, like that, because when I modified pubspec YAML file, watch would go. Look, we have failing tests. Oh my God, all our tests failed. That's great. That's expected, because now we can refactor our application. Let's make the refactoring straight in the UI. And I will put counter text here. Let's say that if counter is 0, then I want to write 0. Do I want to? No, Ivana told us a great thing. I will use expressions. So if 0, then it would be 0. If 1, I will have 1. If 2, I will have 2, and so on. And if other, I will have many, like that. I'll put counter text to test parameter, save my file, and look, our test passed, but we have a problem. One of our lines is not covered with test. What does it mean? Generally speaking, that means that this line is not needed. Like there must be 0 lines in your code that are not covered with tests, because if such lines appears in your project will be unmaintainable with time. Like if I, let's say, make a misprint here, I will never know that 2 is not 2 anymore, but 2a. So I should either add one additional test here or remove this line from here. And that's the approach that I recommend you always do. And by the way, we have a problem with many due to some problems probably with Dart. This line will not be counted in the coverage report, which is really unfortunate. So you cannot rely on 100% of coverage. That will not make your application completely bug-free. The only thing you can do is regularly check your code. Like if you have 100% of coverage, that's great. That doesn't mean that everything is covered, but chances are high, and you need to write more tests. Like let's maybe add this test here. Scenario, a counter has incremented many times. The app is running. When I tap the button and I tap the button, then I don't see 0 and I don't see 1. Oops, I don't see 1, but instead I see many. Yay! All our tests now passed. All right, I don't have much time left, but I wanted to answer a few questions that you potentially got. Is BDD simpler, like BDD approach, simpler than regular tests, regular widget tests? In a way, it allows you to structure your thoughts, provide a clear structure for your code, and that in long run might take the maintenance, especially in a big team, much easier. But amount of code you need to write with this approach, not only BDD widget test, any BDD framework is the same. Like those steps are the same steps we had in our widget tests. So BDD approach adds an additional layer of abstraction, and you're not getting it for free. Like, for example, here I needed to remember that I need to regenerate my code with build runner. If you use BDD widget test, the layer is rather thin. If other frameworks, then it depends. Is it worth it? It's for you to decide, but I encourage you at least to try this approach. And the other question that I regularly get from developers, if I'm the only engineer, I'm only developer on the team, no one will really see these tests. Like, should I follow BDD? Well, I do. I find this approach very easy to follow. It allows me to focus on the behavior, allows me to focus on what is important and not on implementation details. When I see uncovered lines, I remove them. So I don't know. I don't know for you, but I highly recommend you to try this approach again. What's next? Like, if you, like me, prefer dumb small utilities that are doing one job, watch my tiny playlist on YouTube on BDD widget test to become more familiar with the tool and just try it. Alternatively, search for Gherkin or BDD on pub.dev and pick any tool you like and just try it. Like, any tool will do. I scheduled my other BDD video publishing, so the one that I told you from Flutter Vikings. So it should be already on my YouTube. Check it out too if you're interested in this approach and want to get more like theoretical details on it. In that talk, I spoke more about BDD purpose, that it's really a tool for communication. But if you're a single engineer on a team, you can use it too. From my experience, doing BDD is the simplest way to start with a test-first approach, and I'm certain that it can make you a better developer, and it may help you build better apps. Thank you.